Hi, John.
Hi, Eddie.
How are you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
Yeah, it's great to see you. So apparently, you work for a company that does CDC as a service. What's like the classic refresh time that's being required for this use case? And when do you move usually like from batch to CDC?
So essentially what you're going to have there is, starting at like most of our customers use somewhere between 15 to 30 minutes just to keep their warehouse costs manageable, right? Because you don't want to be constantly updating your warehouse every time a new CDC record arrives. But as more production analytics use cases arrive on that warehouse, more end users, more SLAs, that's where you see sync frequencies go from like 30 minutes, 15 minutes, all the way down to 1 minute.
Okay. And so do you have any analytics use case? Because I often doubt like user needs like lower than 15 minutes for human consumption analytics to make decision. But do you have use case in mind versus service, basically a machine or that needs actually this real time?
Let's take airlines for instance. They'll want to track when an airplane's in maintenance on the ground. That's like a real-time problem because that costs them money when planes are just sitting on the runway waiting for maintenance. They have passengers waiting to board. That plane has to catch another flight as soon as it lands. So that's the case where operational analytics is critical.
Cool. Thank you for the talk, John. Nice to meet you, Filip.
Nice to meet you.
So you're working at Deepnote, right?
Deepnote.
Can you tell us a bit the organization of Deepnote, where it was founded, where is your market?
Yeah, of course. So Deepnote builds collaborative Jupyter notebooks. Deepnote was started in 2019 in the US, and right now we have roughly 50 people spread across let's say mainly US and Europe. So we have the product organization, meaning design, PMs, engineering based in Europe. It's spanning all across the European time zones, but like one of the main hubs is in Prague.
Okay.
And then we have the go-to-market organization in the US, in San Francisco, meaning our sales, marketing, community, or partnership teams.
Okay, and why is it that you have a high push to the US, San Francisco in particular?
Yeah, so that's a great question. There are several reasons. One of them definitely being close proximity to our customers. So we have a lot of customers in the US, and our go-to-market team being in roughly the same area means quicker response times, better support, and just better communications flow between them. Then it's also the kind of the talent available. So we have a great team of like experienced people, and a lot of the experience is accumulated in let's say in the Bay Area, New York, or some other hubs in the US. For product, there's I think like the talent pool is also amazing in Europe. And that's why we've kind of also have the product organization set in European time zones in Prague. And the third reason is simply the kind of the existing network. So we had an existing network of people in Europe, and that's kind of where we started building the product company from.
Is there like a bigger adoption in the US because there is a certain data maturity that's different from Europe? Or is it mostly like because you bootstrap it based on your network, as you mentioned?
It could be also said so. Like the average, an average, let's say, data team in the US has likely a higher maturity than the European one. But it's a trend that's closely following, and could be hyper local to some cities or areas.
Yeah.
For example, I could totally easily see that startup hubs like London or Berlin could have a higher data maturity. Like what we've seen in conversation with US customers who are mostly based in Bay Area.
Yeah.
The data maturity there is higher. They likely use more modern. The data stack they're using is modern.
Cool. Thank you for your time, Filip.
Yeah. Thank
nice
you for having me. Nice meeting you too.
So we have Ethan with us. I'm super
Thank you to have
happy.
me.
Yeah, I'm super like I literally just like you were busy working, right? You
Yep.
had to close your laptop.
Yep.
I didn't know you were coming. You booked last minute.
Yeah, I booked everything last week. I knew I was coming. I just didn't plan that far in advance.
Nice.
So I'm here now.
So
But
cool.
yeah,
And you've been a bit slowing down on LinkedIn. Is there any reason for that?
So, number one, I love the conversations that take place on LinkedIn. I'm not as active on Twitter. I'm not as active on other channels. But the really cool thing about the data world on LinkedIn is the debates, the learning, the actual back and forth. It's less like, oh, someone posted content today. It's more in the comments, people arguing, debating, etc.
Yeah.
That's why I was on there. I still do comment and still engage in that type of stuff. But I'm just trying to figure out like, how do we scale? How do we scale our business? How do we scale everything? And I think there's an interesting interplay. I've been learning from you. I've been learning from Ben Rogajan, Seattle data guy, and from other people in the content creation world around like, how do you scale this? And one of the things about LinkedIn I realized recently is content on LinkedIn's ephemeral. Effectively, like 3 months later, it's no longer useful. So I'm trying to find a balance between using LinkedIn for the engagement, the conversations, whereas creating more evergreen content that'll last a lot longer.
Yeah, that's also been. I came actually on LinkedIn pretty late. Like I started on Medium and then YouTube, and then actually LinkedIn, and I was like, oh, actually it's easier to get engagement, but then it's fade out and how people search back. And I don't know for you if it's happening, but I'm like, did I say that in the past? Am I repeating myself? And it's like difficult because it's small bits here and there, and difficult to connect. And what are you looking for at the conference at COALESCE?
Meeting people. That's it.
People.
Yeah, it's like.
So your agenda is full.
Pretty full. I got a lot of meetings already on the calendar, but I'm also just like this. I was working at the table. You came up. Like we've talked a lot, but actually never met in person. So like those types of things I'm excited about this week.
Here we go. Nice to meet you, Michel.
Nice to meet you.
I'm sorry to interrupt you in your meal. You almost finished, so that's good. So Michel is CEO at Airbyte, and I had a nice question, I think, for you. So Airbyte is basically an ingestion tool, open source, and you have a lot of connectors where you can build your own connectors to ingest your custom source, which is really nice compared to those proprietary framework where it's a black box, and if you want something custom, basically it's not possible. Now, how do you basically maintain that at scale? So you have a marketplace, you have connector that you support and connector that the community started, but maybe some of them are going to be critical, used by bigger company. How do you make sure there is maintenance also on those type of connectors?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. So, whenever we think of connectors, we actually see three types of places where people can contribute. And three sources of work, I would say. Like, is there the connector that we build, that we maintain. They are the one that our vendors are building and maintaining, and they are doing it because probably that their customer is asking them for these connectors. And you have the one that are built and maintained by the community. Now the question is, who are these community members? These community members are people in companies that need to have these connectors. So they already have a critical use case, otherwise they would not be spending the time building them. And so they're going to be building them. Ideally they maintain it, but if they don't, it's okay. It means that if the fact that they had to build it means that someone else also needs that connector. So now you have two people like using that connector and depending on it. And if it fails, they will come and they will fix it. One thing that we also started to build to make sure that we don't have too much dependency on just one company or another company is we're building what we call the maintainer program. And the maintainer program is a way of aligning incentive between the community and what the quality of service we want to provide. And here with the maintainer program, it's right now we're starting more as these are bounties for specific issues on connector. But ideally what we want is to create this community of maintainers, of people who now have a strong incentive in keeping this connector high quality with strong SLA. And that could come from like a rev share strategy, but it's really about sharing the revenue with the communities to make sure that the connector remains very high quality.
Yeah, but that's great. It's a bit like what GitHub is doing with the GitHub sponsorship, because I think the problem is also common to outside the data world, right? Whatever open source package that you build can be dangerous longer time if there is no maintenance. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy, for taking some time with me. So you're product manager, and you were on the big stage for the keynote and talking about DBT and Python. Don't you think like the complexity of all these things will actually increase?
You're right. Like there is a real risk of complexity here. But I also think that this complexity and this like fragmentation already exists. It already exists at organizations that have pipelines written in Python or data science work written in Python that is outside the DBT project, completely invisible to all the people who are developing models in SQL and might not know that those SQL models are powering these downstream dependencies.
Yeah.
Or even worse, they're not powering those downstream dependencies because the data scientists have reinvented or redefined all of the same similar transformations, data cleaning, data redefinition, in a totally different language that's totally inaccessible to DBT users.
So now you have, instead to do duct tape to link those things with the DBT project, you include all those things, and then you leverage metadata and therefore lineage. That's the end game.
So I think by comparison with duct tape data stack, multilingual polyglot data stack, we think it will be less complexity in the long run to centralize and unify these workloads into DBT. And we think also that the value of DBT as a framework, while it has been immensely valuable for the abstractions, the tests, the metadata definitions that it's been able to provide for SQL models, that framework, like those benefits are actually language agnostic.
Yeah.
We really think that everything it has done for SQL, it can also do a lot of that for Python as well.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. It was a pleasure to have you.
Yeah.
And have a great day.
Thanks so much.
Hey Adam, nice to meet you. So Adam was also on the keynote. So you're Senior VP Product from Databricks.
Yes.
You announced basically DBT and Databricks integration, right? How do you see the collaboration of data scientists reacting to such features, like the classic people that using notebooks, for example?
Yeah. So there's an awful lot. Notebooks is the most common sort of development environment for data scientists, we view that. We certainly view that as continuing. But some people want to use the DBT interface to manage a DAG, to manage, to basically orchestrate workflows. Maybe they're mixing existing SQL pipelines with some with some Photon pipelines, and DBT gives the great ability to do that. So we view that as not like an either or. And in fact, the demo we just did was prototyping it out in a notebook and then moving that code over to DBT to run it as a DAG.
Cool.
So, yeah.
I like it. I hope I won't see like so large notebook with SQL pipeline that's difficult to testing. So I'm really looking forward to look into that integration.
Great.
Thank you, Adam, for your time.
Of course.
Gleb, it's nice to finally meet you in person.
Yeah, absolutely, Michel.
Like we got into contact 2 years, I think it was like for a decade probably for you, because you were just starting Datafold, right? Which is a data quality tool. Who should not use actually your tool, Datafold?
I think I would probably raise this question into who would get more value out of Datafold versus less value out of Datafold. I think what we're seeing is teams that get more value have two things that I care about. One of them is data quality. That might sound cheesy, but basically, what is the risk and what is the real business cost of making decisions based on bad data? And specifically for Datafold, that means users could get most value out of Datafold, maybe relative to other approaches to data quality, is that teams who want to basically be proactive about data quality, meaning that finding out about issues before they get to production. That's one. I think the second one is productivity. So the faster you want to move, the faster you have to ship, the less time you have to test, the more error-prone your developer workflow is.
It's a trade-off.
And so basically our primarily customers who get the most value of Datafold are those who have a pressure to move fast and also high cost of making bad decisions on data. So that tends to be companies either in specific spaces like biotech or fintech or tech in general, where there's a lot of pressure. But sometimes that's also companies in highly regulated environments like healthcare. Who would get less value from Datafold is probably companies who are not really on a modern data stack. And the reason is because if you're not a modern data stack, typically your workflow is bottlenecked by other things than testing, like your queries take forever to run.
You have other problems to tackle.
Yeah, and it takes forever to package SQL if you're not using DBT, right? So
thank you for your time, Gleb. And
absolutely.
Wish you a great time at the conference.
Thank you, Michel.
Yeah. All right, I'm with Louise here. We are just a bit aside of evening party outside organized by DBT. How do you enjoy the music so far?
The music's been going great between jazz and hardcore commercial music. It's great. We're loving it.
So I had a question for you. You've been putting a lot of content online for about a year or two. What impact did it have on your career so far?
You were mentioning when we were off records that creating content was creating your own luck, and I really agree with this. For me, when I started, I kind of slipped into content, and now I see that it's opened many doors in a lot of different industry. First, it forces me to put a really high bar on understanding the technical concepts. So now it gives me the visibility and the personal branding to go in any industry, may it be VC or product or like a lot of industries that the doors would have been closed before doing content for me. And also it's turned, although it was frustrating not being able to measure the success, it's been a really high success factor for Castor, the company I work for. It's been like doing a lot for the visibility of the company.
Sure.
So
and your background is technical, right?
So my original background is a mix of politics, philosophy, and economics, which I topped with a master's in data science, which helped me understand the technical stuff afterwards.
Cool. Thank you for your time, Louise, and I'll see you around.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. Thank you.
See you. Okay, nice to meet you, Chris.
Nice to meet you, yeah.
And thanks for your time.
For sure.
So I had a question for you. Why do you think people should try something else than Airflow?
Other than Airflow. So I think there are use cases that Airflow is great at. So like I don't think there's like a wholesale everyone should move away from Airflow type of response. But that being said, Airflow very much came from kind of the Hadoop world, and its architecture and structure is, kind of built on that model. And so for things that are, for example, really high scale, so I know a lot of data scientists, for example, have workflows that just scale out to thousands of tasks. Airflow just can't handle that. A scheduler can't keep up with something like that. So scalability is one thing. Another thing is a lot of workloads these days are moving to a little bit more of an event-driven approach, so not kind of this batch approach, right? And having a system that not only can you trigger jobs through an API at some relatively high speed, but also having the system be aware of what those events are and can track the events natively as well is another thing that's kind of outside of the scope of Airflow. And then the last thing is I think a lot of the tools just in the modern data stack, quote unquote, are really about meeting users where they are. So, right, not all users are software engineers. They know how to write code in a very particular way.
Yeah.
And tools like Airflow that are older really force you to refactor code in ways that sometimes can be really clunky or even destructive. And so having something that can integrate more seamlessly with your code that already exists is another thing that, incentivizes people to look elsewhere.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris, for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Mark, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
So, you are running a data catalog company, right?
Yes,
so I have a question for you. What is preventing the data world today to have a mainstream adoption of data catalog?
Yeah, I think the biggest barrier is not knowing the value a data catalog can provide when it's fully set up. And I would describe that in two ways. The first one is that you have a lot of people in the company who don't know what data is out there, what's trustworthy, and how to use it. And historically, it's taken a lot of curation, like typing documentation by hand in order to make that happen. And now with catalogs, it's become possible to get a lot of that information automatically from Snowflake, from dbt, from Looker and Tableau, so that you can power an experience that's really rich around understanding what exists, what's trustworthy, and how do I use it by looking at other examples and how it's already being used. And that experience is possible on day one, which historically has taken forever. Yeah. And so like there's a lot of automation that we have in Stemma that makes that possible. So that's number one. Number two is as data is evolving a ton, there's a lot of changes that are happening to data. I'm deprecating tables, I'm changing type of columns, and then knowing who is using certain assets so I can tell them that they need to change their dashboard or like change their query that's saved in Snowflake UI is really important. And a catalog provides deep insight into who is it that's using this data and how often. That can be very useful when you're doing impact analysis for change management.
Yeah,
so
change management, migration, upgrades.
Yeah, exactly. So I think those are the two main things that people don't quite understand how severe they are and how much a data catalog can help that prevent broad adoption today.
Cool. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thanks.